Hello and welcome to a live Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. Today is Monday, August 12th. I hope you had a great weekend. We had a great one. Um, Let me know if there is an echo. I don't have my headphones in. I haven't tried this before without headphones. So if there's a problem, I'll just plug them in. But it's good to see you guys. And oh, somebody in the chat said, Lettuce said, "Did Anthony win that music contest?" Well, he made it to the quarterfinals. These things, like I said, they're a bit annoying. They want you just to constantly bug people. Now he's in the quarterfinals, and if he makes it through that, then he's in the semifinals, and then if he makes it through that, there's like a week for each of these, and then he's in the finals, and the finals is like the last group. That's where they pick the winner. So it's a long process. If you want to vote for him, the link is the same. It's his the link that I gave out previously. And thank you very much to everyone who voted because they made it. They made it into the quarterfinals, which was very exciting. And so we were like, well, that's a good thing to be able to, to say that he's like these online contests are kind of silly, but it's a good thing to be able to say he did that and hopefully get some press for it and stuff. Yeah, thanks, Therese. Woohoo! And Helena says she does not hear an echo. Good. Andrew Joyner for £2 late as usual. I'm going for a walk. See you soon. Hey, Andrew, thanks for the super chat. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about being late as usual. Thanks for super chatting me for being late. You're giving me the wrong incentive, dude. You're giving me the wrong incentive if you super chat me for being late. You just got to go the other way. Say no super chats from me. Thank you so much. BS became a YouTube member. Hey, BS. Good to see you here. And Davina, good look, Anthony. Thank you guys. Yeah, it was really cool. I'm way into it more than he is. I'm on the contest link at the last minute for each of these eliminations. Like, did he make it? Because at the end of each week he has to be number one. And I'm like texting everybody I know. I'm like campaigning. Our democracy depends on it. Vote for my husband. But thank you guys for voting. So just a quick announcement. Speaking of my husband and his music, if you're in Texas and you like his music, there's a big show coming up this Saturday in Mason. It's at the historic Odeon Theater. It's this really beautiful old movie theater, and it'll be the whole band. That's why it's like a very special show, and it's in this big theater. So if you would like tickets, you can go to anthonygarciamusic.com and you can get tickets there. And that's for the full band. That's a Los Diablos Tejanos show. I hope to see some of you guys there. Okay. Oh, and he's here today. Hey, Anthony. So today I thought we would sometimes this is the live show. If you're new here, Mondays and Fridays, we talk about things in the news sometimes, other times sort of bigger picture topics, whatever you guys are interested in. You can also suggest things in the comments. I appreciate it. I want to hear what kind of information people are looking for. I had someone write me this weekend asking if I can do videos or to help explain to a family member who's in the woke world what woke is. And that's the goal of this channel. And but we get off on different topics about what's happening in the news in the world and looking at it from the perspective of woke ideology. So today I thought I would do one that's more focused on a big picture topic, which is, this is good for people who are still in the woke world. Why I left. I was in that world for 20 years. And just specifically, why is woke, the modern left, what we know as the modern left, why it's not liberalism. It's closer to communism and Marxism. So I titled this one just very simply, "The left is not liberal." And that's true. Our current mainstream left is not liberal. And that's a big reason why I left that cult. I do call it a cult. I think it functions like a cult. I've done videos on the cult aspects before. But today, instead of the cult aspects, we're looking specifically at the principles and the beliefs of the modern left and how they are. It's not liberalism, it's very illiberal. It's the exact opposite of liberalism. This is good for a couple of reasons. One, for people who are still in that woke cult that I was in, a lot of them, I don't mean to condescend if anyone's watching from that world, but it's almost like you've been brainwashed to a degree. It was almost like I was brainwashed. Like in a cult, they slowly start to get you to accept all of these new terms, new definitions. They redefine old words. And so a lot of people who are in that world think of themselves as liberals. When they got into the woke ideology, they were perhaps liberals. But the longer they spend in it, the more illiberal they become in all of these illiberal principles that they're adopting. And so it's important to tell people it's not liberal, because if they have a strong attachment to their identity as a liberal, and a lot of people on the left do. Actually, a lot of people on any part of the political spectrum seem to have a big chunk of their identity wrapped up in their political beliefs, which is odd, but they seem to have a large part of their identity. I had a large part of my identity wrapped up in being a liberal. So one way to help people wake up and leave that cult, the ones who are open-minded enough to listen to what you're saying and to consider it, is to point out all the ways in which that belief system is not liberal. That will help wake people up. And so I saw a tweet this weekend from James Lindsay that I thought was really important. I'm going to share this, and it echoes some of my beliefs about this. So James Lindsay down here, he said, conservatives who still call leftists, both progressives and Marxists, liberals, are at this point sloppy and lazy. We can't really afford to be so undisciplined in our discourse right now. So he's saying, hey, a lot of you conservatives still call all of the left liberal, and we shouldn't be doing that. And that's his opinion. That's an opinion that I share. I don't know if you've noticed, if you've been watching this channel for a while, but I've never called leftists liberals. I've never called the woke left liberals. I've never called the Marxist left, whatever you want to call them. I've called them social justice, all these things that they are: social justice, woke, leftists, radical leftists, alt left, extremists, Marxists, communists. They're all of these things, cultists, wokies, but they are not liberals. And I specifically have not chosen to use that word because I try to choose my words carefully. And that word is inaccurate. That's not what they are. And I know some conservatives, they don't think that this distinction in language is that important. But I understand that perspective. I've had that conversation in real life before with some conservatives, and I don't tell people what they have to say. Of course, you can choose if you want to call them liberals or not. I'm here today, though, to try and make the case for why I think that's a bad idea. The number one reason I think that's a bad idea is because they are not liberal, so I'm not going to use that incorrect word. And number two, because one of my goals is to help people leave my old cult, to leave the woke left. And I think one of the great ways of doing that is showing them the differences between liberalism and woke ideology. And so why would I reinforce for them that they are somehow liberal when they're not? I'm not going to reinforce that for them, especially when their identity's wrapped up in falsely thinking they're liberal. I'm not going to validate that and say, yeah, you are, you're liberal. You're not. You're not. But if you would like to be a liberal, you can leave that woke world, and you're going to get called a right winger and a conservative, and those things aren't even bad. But you're going to get called a lot of worse things that are very bad. You're going to get called all kinds of things just for being an actual liberal, and that's okay. You'll get over it. There's that meme that's sort of like a first time, like first time you get called all that, it doesn't matter. So James Lindsay said, conservatives who still call leftists, both progressives and Marxist liberals, are at this point sloppy and lazy. We can't really afford to be so undisciplined in our discourse right now. And I just responded to that and said, yes, I've never called the woke Marxist liberals, only leftists, because they're not liberals. Censorship, violence, authoritarianism, racism, sexism, lockdowns, coercion to take the jab, mutilating and sterilizing children, anti-science, anti-truth. None of this is liberal. It's decidedly illiberal. And the thing is, those with good intent who are still amongst the woke, who are brainwashed and think this is liberalism, some of those can be and have been reached by pointing out to them that this ideology is illiberal. It happened to me. So that's why, in a nutshell, why I think this is important. So let's go to a source that the left loves, mostly because they kind of control it and they do most of the editing, and the mods there will remove conservatives who put conservative sources. If you put a source in there, they'll say that's not a trusted source. They only accept the leftist sources, right? So they will remove information if it's not woke. And that is Wikipedia. They love Wikipedia. So let's go to Wikipedia. So Wikipedia. We're going to use the Wikipedia definition. They wrote it. They edited it together. Okay. So we're starting here. Oh, and first of all, thank you. Hey, Eric. Good to see you again. Thank you, Eric Heffelfinger, for $10. He says 2 stories are not getting enough attention. Harris required ID to get into her Arizona rally. What? I didn't know that. How ironic. What a hypocrite, right? They don't think that you should have to have an ID to vote, but you got to have an ID to get into her rally. That's hilarious. Thank you for telling me about that. And then he also continued, and she was the tiebreaker vote that allowed the IRS to keep taxing tips last year. Wow, I didn't know that either. I'm going to bookmark these stories for later. We're going to be doing a lot of Kamala episodes, unfortunately. Hey, Tom, Midnight's Edge is here. I will be on their Toxic Femme show later tonight. If you guys want to come on over. Okay. So let's go through the left's definition. This is Wikipedia. They like Wikipedia. So I'm not going to a source that they will, get mad about. They like to get mad about sources and do a little what's called genetic fallacy, where they refuse to read something or engage with any facts if they can just immediately write off the source. They like to do that a lot. So sometimes when I'm talking to them, I like to pick the sources that they are not going to write off immediately. So here we go. Liberalism is a political and moral philosophy based on the rights of the individual, liberty, consent of the governed, political equality, right to private property, and equality before the law. We're going to stop right there. Actually, let me read this whole first paragraph, and then we're going to go back and take this apart bit by bit. Liberals espouse various and often mutually warring views depending on their understanding of these principles, but they generally support private property, market economies, individual rights, including civil rights and human rights, liberal democracy, secularism, rule of law, economic and political freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and freedom of religion. Liberalism is frequently cited as the dominant ideology of modern history. So, what is currently dominant in the West is no longer liberalism. This is no longer true. It used to be the dominant ideology of modern history, but currently in the West and the United States, for sure, the dominant ideology is leftist, Marxist, woke, social justice, identity politics. That's the dominant religion, the dominant ideology, and it's decidedly a liberal. I'm going to walk through these with you. So if you're here from the left, just try and keep an open mind and think about each of these principles. If you think you're a liberal and you think you believe in these principles, let's walk through them, and let's walk through some recent history with the modern left. So let's start with the rights of the individual. So the woke left they are not individualists. They don't believe in individualism. Individualism is basically you treat people based on the content of their character. You treat people as individuals. You judge them as individuals based on how they behave, what their beliefs are, what their actions are. You treat them as an individual person. That's a philosophy, to treat people as individuals. It's what Martin Luther King was talking about when he said, "One day I hope my children are judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin." That's individualism. That's a part of liberalism. The new woke left, the cult I was in for 20 years, the one that's currently dominant, they are not individualists. They are collectivists. Collectivist is the opposite of individualists. They are collectivists. They believe that you should look at people and judge them as group members, as collective members, as members of a group based on their race, their sex, their sexuality, all of these different identity groups that they're in. They think you should judge and treat people differently based on identity group. They're collectivists. That's not a liberal value. That's not a liberal principle to do that. There are some other groups that they claim to hate who do the same thing. White supremacists are collectivists also. White supremacists look at people they look at a new person not as an individual, but based on what racial group they're in. The social justice, the woke people do the same thing. They look at people based on what identity group they're in. They treat them differently based on what identity group they're in. This goes all the way up. It's so dominant now. It's so culturally dominant, and we've gotten so used to it that if you think you're a liberal, but you're okay with this, I kind of empathize with you because it's the result of years and years of indoctrination and also propaganda. But it's reached the office of president. That's how far this has reached. This is how mainstream this kind of collectivism, this kind of racism and sexism has become on the left. The president of the US, Joe Biden, he told us before he picked his VP, Kamala Harris, he told us he was going to pick a woman of color. He bragged about it. And all of the leftist press, they bragged about it as well. We saw on this show last week a clip of Joy Reid in 2020 on television saying, will you commit to hiring a Black woman as vice president? They look at people and judge people and treat people differently based on race and sex. I can't underline this point enough. This is one of the for some of the people who think they're liberals but are in the woke cult, this is one of the big things that if you can actually get them to start thinking about this, it can help to break them out of it down. You might plant a seed that breaks them out of it down the road because they think of themselves, their psychology is such that they think they are against racism and sexism while they support it. They've been conned. And the woke cult comes up with all kinds of crazy redefinitions and new words to try and obscure from these people who think they're liberal, to try and hide the fact that they are teaching them how to be racist and sexist. So they do things like change the definition of racism. Like a cult. They change it. That was like the first thing I learned when I became a part of the woke cult. The first redefinition I learned was they said, hey, this isn't racism what we're doing because racism is prejudice plus power. And then they've conveniently listed out all the identity groups and said, white people have power. People of color and Black people do not have power. Therefore, see how they're retraining your mind, how they're programming your mind? They're like, therefore, it is impossible to be racist towards a white person. Therefore, it's not racism when we support legalized racial discrimination, where we discriminate against Asian people in college admissions or hiring, where we discriminate against white people. That's not technically racism because we have a new definition of racism now. Haha, that's how we get off the hook. This is really how they con the liberals who get pulled into social justice. They just redefine words. It's that simple. And then they come up with new phrases like anti-racist. And they say you have to be anti-racist. And much like, Orwellian language, where you name something the opposite of what it is, that's what they're doing there. They are calling racism anti-racism. And they're like, but it can't be racist because we call it anti-racism. Yeah, we're going to discriminate racially, but it's not racism because we named it anti-racism. So, you're good. You're cool. You're cool, liberals. You're just being anti-racist. They name things the opposite of what they are, like a cult. They do this a lot. So they are not individualists. They are collectivists. Let's look at the next one. Liberty. Liberty, which is freedom. They no longer, the modern day left, does not care about liberty. They don't care about individual freedoms. We can look at recent history to support this. Well, first of all, they attack the Second Amendment all the time. They don't believe in your right to self-defense. Liberals believe in our right to self-defense, our right to defend ourselves. They don't believe in that. They believe, the modern left, the woke left, the authoritarian left, again, whatever you want to call them, they are not liberals. They believe that the government should be the only people with guns. The government. That men with guns are our betters. And it's weird. They don't look at history like liberals do. They don't look at history and look back and say, wow, it's kind of weird how every authoritarian dictator, like one of the first things they did was disarm the citizens, disarm people's right to self-defense. That's always happened. They don't look at that. They don't even consider it because they think they're on the side of good. There's a lot of reasons why they don't consider it, but they are arguing for the same thing. Let's disarm citizens. Let's make sure the government's the only people with guns. And criminals, of course, because they can't stop that. They don't admit that either, that the criminals will still have guns. If you outlaw guns, what's that saying? If you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns. So they don't believe in liberty. But we also saw this on a massive scale during COVID. And again, if you're from the left and you think you're a liberal, just bear with me. During COVID, we saw the powers that be, we saw them manipulate this left-to-right tribalism to get a lot of people on the left to suddenly start supporting big pharma, first of all, which was crazy, and also supporting this massive authoritarianism where the government was able to say, you don't have individual liberty, you don't have the right to go to work and make a living. Don't worry, we're going to make you dependent. It's the opposite of liberty. They want you dependent on the government. They're like, you can't go to work. You can't operate your small business. You can't do what all humans do, which is to determine the cost benefits of a choice, the risk assessment that we do for every choice, whether it's getting on the highway and driving a car, riding a motorcycle, eating too many sweets. They said, no, this risk, we're not going to let you assess on your own. You're not going to get to choose whether you go to work or not. We're telling you can't. We're telling you can't operate your small business. I interviewed a grandma who was thrown in jail for operating her coffee shop. That's crazy. That's her choice. It should be her choice. And it's the public's choice if they go in there and choose to buy a coffee from her and to frequent that establishment. And it's her employee's choice to come to work or not. They threw her in jail for making that choice to operate her small business. They allowed large chains, stores, large corporations to stay open. They closed AA meetings, but they left the liquor stores open. Did you notice this in your town? They closed gyms. They closed AA meetings. They closed small mom and pop businesses, and a lot of those went out of business. They couldn't survive it. But they left all the liquor stores. They closed churches, right? But they left the liquor stores open, and they left the big box chain stores open and the corporations open. And it was the largest transfer of wealth we've ever seen from the middle class to the elite. That's not liberty. That's not supporting liberty. Telling people they don't have a right to go out and work. That the government can't just take that away from them at the drop of a hat. They took that away from us. And the left they were hypnotized by this left-right psyop that they've pulled on us, where they just say, here's what the right's doing, and the left just reacts like, I don't want to be associated with the right. I have to do the opposite. It's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. The masking, some states forced masks on people, on children even. And a lot of parents did speak out against it. There were a lot of school board arguments and fights where parents were speaking against this, but some parents just rolled right over and went along with it. Sure, I believe the government. I believe men with guns can force me to put a mask on my kid, even though there's no evidence that it's going to protect my kid from anything from COVID. But I'm going to go right along with that. We're going to mask our kids. A consequence of that, by the way, if you're on the left, you're not aware, was that much later on, the CDC rolled back its timeline at which young children should be speaking, should be learning language. It basically said, oh, well, now kids are developing later in life. They're learning to speak later. They're hitting all these milestones later. Where the CDC was like, we're changing our milestones, and we're saying it's going to happen later now. This is just something that happened. When they announced that, they didn't say, hey, I wonder why this might be that we're having to push back all the milestones for kids now. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that for 2 or 3 years, kids couldn't see the lips of adults, and that's part of the way they learn how to speak. Maybe it's because we kept them home and we masked them and we masked everyone around them. Anyway, none of this is liberty. They don't support liberty. They don't support individual rights. They support dependence on the government. They support government oppression, government tyranny, government authoritarianism over the rights of the individual, over the freedom of the individual. So that's another way in which they are not liberal. Consent of the governed. This one's really interesting to me because if you look at the modern left, they say all these contradictory things because it truly is a cult. They get their marching orders and then they all just repeat. Like I'm sure you've seen the memes about NPCs, non-player characters. They just repeat things. And so one of the things they've been repeating a lot lately is it's this weird projection thing where they're saying Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, or people on the right are a threat to democracy, or a very democracy will end. They don't believe in democracy anyway. That's what's funny. That's what's funny. The 2016 election, they shrieked, they hollered, they talked about cheating. They didn't believe in the integrity of the 2016 election. They talked about how we should get rid of the Electoral College. We should do recounts. It was over the top crazy. You know, they didn't believe that the election was fair. They thought it was rigged, blah, blah, blah. 2020 rolls around and they react the completely opposite way. They don't want recounts. They don't want to ensure election integrity. Suddenly they're on the other side of this. They don't want to make sure the elections are secure. They've always said they don't think you should have to have an ID, which is weird. Why would you say that if you're liberal? Why would you say that? People shouldn't have to have an ID to vote. They try and cloak it in racism by saying, well, they say black people don't know how to get an ID. That's racist. That's not liberal. And it's just factually wrong. But they don't, suddenly in 2020, they didn't believe in election integrity. And they censored people on the right. They were in charge of all these, the new left, the woke left, all the social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter at the time. And any YouTuber knows this. And if you are in the chat on a lot of YouTube shows, you know this. They took down any videos that even questioned. You didn't have to make an accusation. You could just question and say, hey, I don't know if I trust this. You know, can we ask questions about what happened and about the counts? And they took down the videos. They censored it. I've been told they've since loosened up on that. Guess why? Because we're about to have another election. And if it doesn't go the way they want to be able to say it was rigged and fake and that they want election integrity. They're loosening up on the guidelines, but we could not. They would take your video down. You would get a strike if you even asked a question about it. So consent of the governed. They don't believe in democracy. They just, this is crazy when you think about it. They just went along with their party selecting, not electing, selecting a nominee for president of the United States, and they went along with it. Kamala Harris did not win a primary. They just picked someone. They picked someone like a king. They just said it's going to be her. And they all went along with it. They don't believe in, and you know what? There's a lot of Democrats pissed about this. You may not have seen this. And if you're in the woke left, you may not have seen these dissident Democrats and these dissident liberals who actually believe in the rule of law and in democracy. And they've been doing videos saying, you know, this is not right. Even BLM, which is crazy because BLM is woke. BLM came out, Black Lives Matter came out and said, this is not right. This is not fair. We should get to vote on who the candidate is. This is insane. But they just went right along with it. You can bet your britches they would be so happy. They would be so happy to do the same thing to select the president. Like they want to select the president. They don't want an election. They don't want a fair election. Okay, let's look at a couple more of these. The right to private property. This one is so important because that's a liberal value, the right to private property. Do you want to know why? If you're on the left, if you consider yourself a liberal, and I've met a lot of you and had conversations with you at protests and other events, and it's so interesting. I like to ask you guys, and maybe you can ask a leftist in your life this question. How do you define freedom? How do you, like, if you think about freedom, what do you need to ensure freedom? A lot of them have never thought about these issues. They're just part of a tribe. They've actually never thought about it. The more I've thought about the issue of freedom, the more I've realized, obviously, it's tied to private property, the ability to maintain the fruits of your labor without having it be stolen by men with guns, by the government. And you can expand your freedom, you can maximize your freedom the more property you are allowed to keep. If you're working hard for something, you should be able to keep the fruits of it. The reason why private property is so directly tied to freedom is that it means you're not dependent. You're not dependent on the government. You're not dependent on men with guns. You're not dependent on this tyranny to give you handouts, to give you a universal basic income, to give you a monthly check, some pittance that they determine and that they take from other people. You're not dependent. You're not a slave to the government. The modern woke left, they oppose private property rights. They're not liberals. They're communists. They don't believe in private property rights. Look at some of the stuff they've tried to introduce that the Democrats, the modern left, look at some of the stuff they've tried to introduce in recent years. They tried to put in the infrastructure bill a tax, a per mileage tax, if you use your private vehicle. So not only are they taxing your income when you make it, and taxing your gas when you buy it, and taxing your purchase of your car when you buy that, they're also they said we should be able to tax you for every mile that you drive your private car. We want to take some money from you. Every mile that you drive your car. We want to look at your odometer. We want to see how far you've driven, and we want to tax you for it, for using a private vehicle. That is a disincentive for owning a private vehicle, and they know it because they don't want you to own a private vehicle. They want you dependent on public transportation. They say this. The World Economic Forum, which is full of these Marxists, these communists, they say this in their 2030 agenda. They say by the year 2030, you will own nothing and you will be happy. They put out advertisements for it with these smiling people. It's very dystopian and creepy. And they're smiling, and it says by the year 2030, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. If you're in the world I used to be in, you probably don't even know this. This isn't some conspiracy theory. Go, please look it up. They don't want you to have private property. They have visions. You can watch on YouTube. They have whole presentations on what they call smart cities, where you're completely dependent on the government. They have a version of what they think the best future looks like for us little people. And it's where we don't own anything, as mentioned. I read an article, an op-ed that they wrote, the WF wrote for Forbes, and it was talking about how in the future, in 2030, you won't even own your home or an apartment. You won't even you'll be renting it from basically the government, but you'll only have it part-time. So at night you might sleep there, but during the day it's used as an office. You don't even own it. Like you're not even renting the space 24/7 from the government. You just get it. Just let me get in my little hovel for bedtime. I own nothing and I'm so happy. That's what they think the best future is for us farm animals. So nothing is wasted, right? During the day when you're at work, there's other people working in your little hovel. And in this piece for Forbes, they even said stuff like, when you want to cook something, you order it from the government. Like you order a knife and a bowl because you don't have them. You don't own anything. And there'll be a convenient little app and you just, here's the utensils I need and the bowl and everything. Bring it over to my hovel. They want us completely dependent. This sounds ridiculous and I'm laughing, but they write this in seriousness that this is the vision to get us as close to this as possible. They don't want you owning your own home. They don't want you owning your own vehicle. They want you taxed for everything. They want to make you dependent. Another one here, equality before the law and political equality. So this one is very obvious. They are not the woke people. They're not liberals on this issue. They do not believe in equality. They believe in equity. And you hear that word all the time now, equity. We just watched last week on this channel a video about Kamala Harris, Kamala the Communist. That's the name of that video. And we watched her in video after video after video proudly saying that she believes in equity, not equality. That equality is not enough. You need equity. And she goes on to define that as some people need more. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means judging and treating people differently, again, based on what collective they're in, based on their race, based on their sex. That means that necessarily means legalized discrimination on the basis of race and sex. That's what that means. That you should take a lot from some and give a lot to others, take little from some, give little to others. It's the communist phrase. It's that communist phrase about from each according to their talents, right? To each according to their needs. That the government should be there, should be this middleman that's like deciding who they take from and how much they take from based on what race and sex you are, and then distributing it. They get to decide who they're stealing from and who they're giving to based on racial and sex-based discrimination. That's not liberalism. That is straight communism. She believes in equity. The whole party does now, because the whole party, all the liberals have died off or left. All the liberals are now called right-wing conservatives. All the liberals I know, who've woken up to what woke is, they've left. They get called right-wingers now. The whole party is run by these woke leftist Marxist communists. Like, they're not liberals, but that's who's running the Democratic Party now. That's who's running corporations now. It's not liberals. That's who's running Hollywood now. It's not liberals. Academia, education, it's not liberals. It's this woke Marxist garbage, which is decidedly illiberal. I'm going to scroll down to this part here where it's talking about secularism. They are not secularists. The woke left. They're religious. They're Marxists. That's their religion. They treat their woke Marxism like a faith. They believe in magic. They believe in crazy things that are not based in reality and that there's no evidence to support. Look at the recent controversy at the Olympics with the 2 male boxers who just won. It's been weeks and weeks of these woke cult members showing up in my comments on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube even, and saying stuff like, basically they're saying men can be women. It's magic. Trust us. They don't believe in science. And they want to put this religion, this woke Marxist religion, in schools. They have put it in schools. They have faith-based schools now. All the public schools are faith-based. They're woke Marxists. They're teaching that religion. They're teaching that we should judge and treat people differently on the basis of race and sex. They're teaching that men can become women, that men are women. They believe in ritual sacrifice of children. I mean, it sounds crazy, but that's what they're doing. They believe in sterilizing and mutilating kids. Why? Because of magic. Because of this magic, this non-scientific belief system of theirs. It's crazy. They are some of the most religious people I've ever met. Freedom of speech. This is a big one. Liberals believe in freedom of speech, but the woke left doesn't. The woke left believes in censorship. They believe in authoritarianism. They believe that an authority, be it the government or a corporation, they believe that that it is a moral right to censor. They were very happy when Twitter 1.0 censored the Hunter Biden laptop story. They were very happy about it. They were very happy when people got banned before Elon took over, when people got banned from Twitter and from social media. I had a friend who thought he was liberal, who was in this woke world. He had gotten sucked into this woke cult like I had, thinking it was liberal. They had him doing all these crazy illiberal things, and he was still thinking he was a liberal. He was sending around a petition to get Alex Jones banned from Twitter. He sent it to me. It was like, hey, Alex Jones has been banned from Facebook and YouTube and all these other places, but not from Twitter yet. Will you sign this to get him banned? And I was like, dude, I thought you were a liberal. What are you doing? You're campaigning for censorship? It's crazy. They were happy when anybody during the COVID years who questioned the origins of the virus, you couldn't even ask where the virus came from. They would ban you. They would take your video down. They were happy about that. Even though now the mainstream media admits, yeah, it most likely came from the Wuhan lab, obviously. Duh. But we were getting banned. We were getting videos pulled down. We were getting strikes for that. They loved it. They loved that censorship. People got their videos taken down for talking about, I had one taken down for interviewing people who were being coerced into getting the vaccine by their jobs. And several of them worked in healthcare, and they were having to decide if they were going to quit or not. And one of these guys had, I talked with his wife. He had a pre-existing condition that was a blood clotting disorder. and his doctor had told him specifically not to get the vaccine, and his job didn't care. And just by interviewing these people and talking about the conundrum they were in of deciding if they were going to keep their job by taking this vax that they didn't want to take or losing their income, like, just by interviewing those people, I had that video taken down and I got a strike on my old channel. That was crazy. It was a crazy time, and the left loved it because they're not liberal. They loved it. There were people who had innocuous videos taken down that were about the benefits of vitamin C. Remember this on YouTube? You couldn't even do a video talking about vitamin C or vitamin D and how they're good for you. They would take it down and give you a strike. And the left loved this. There were scientists and doctors who were banned, perma-banned from Twitter until Elon bought it. They loved it. They loved that censorship of science. Facebook, I had articles. There was one. It was a study that I shared, a scientific study. I didn't even add any commentary. I just shared the results of the study, and they removed it and gave me, some kind of 30-day shadow ban or whatever. And they directed me to the new terms of service, which I went and read. And in the new terms of service, they said that Facebook would be removing things, even scientific studies, even things that were factual, if they might cause vaccine hesitancy. Isn't that crazy? Again, I ask you, if you consider yourself a liberal and you don't know about all this, I ask you to look some of it up. Ask questions in the chat. Ask questions in the comments. Get an outside perspective. You are being lied to. You are being fed propaganda. They have you on this psychological lockdown where they have convinced you, haven't they, that you shouldn't be friends with anyone who's not in the woke world, that they're all bad people. I mean, God forbid you're friends with a Trump voter, right? They've convinced you shouldn't read anything that's not the pre-approved cult sources. Like, haven't they done that? When was the last time you read a source that was considered conservative or right wing, or listened to a podcast from someone that had been, labeled as such? When's the last time you engaged with anything that's not from your approved cult list? None of what they've sold you is liberalism. None of it. One of the things that is not on this list, but I wanted to mention, is that a lot of liberals are anti-violence, but the modern woke left is not. Look at, one of the things that woke me up was in 2016, seeing all of the violence at Trump rallies, and it wasn't from the Trump voters, and that blew my mind. But it was video after video of leftists who went to these Trump rallies on purpose so they could attack Trump voters as they came out of the rallies, bloodying them with bricks, chasing them down, mobbing them, throwing eggs at them. It was sick. It was sickening to watch. And that hit me emotionally. Look at all the violence during the BLM riots. Look at all the Antifa violence. Look at how the left, the modern left embraces its racists, its extremists, is the ones who do violence. They embrace it. The politicians say, get out there in the streets and do more. The media says it's mostly peaceful while there's fires raging in the background and they're killing people. That's not liberalism. You're not in a liberal movement anymore. I'm sorry. The liberals all left, and we're called conservatives now. That's really what happened. It's really what happened. You may find, if you get out of it, if you want to be a true liberal and you start thinking about these things and you get out of it, you may find, oh my goodness, I have more in common with conservatives than I do with the woke left. Yeah, you do. Liberals do have more in common with conservatives than you do with the woke left. A lot more. Like a lot of these principles up here. I'm going to take a break from ranting and see what you guys, if you guys have any questions. I'm trying to do kind of a succinct one today. Ace Hanlon, who's been a member for 2 months, thank you, Ace, says liberals and Dems have been promoting hate for a long time. They have, but again, they're not liberals. That's the whole point of this. They are Democrats, but they're leftists. They're leftists. They're woke. They're Marxists. They're not liberals. The liberals are all Republicans now, or libertarians. The liberals left the Democrats. We've all left. The ones who are still there who say they're liberal are not. They haven't woken up yet, but they're not liberals. There's no liberals in that party anymore. Super based for $2. Thank you, Super Base. Says a reminder that Ibram X. Kendi's real name is Henry Rogers. I know, it's so funny, right? Ibram X. Kendi, who says he coined the term anti-racism, which is racism. And he's the one that is on the record saying that he said the solution to past racial discrimination is current discrimination. He says this, current racial discrimination. He says it outright. What they usually don't say out loud, he says it out loud, that we have to racially discriminate. Ibram X. Kendi says this. He says the solution to past discrimination is present day discrimination, and the solution to present day discrimination is future discrimination. He says this, admits it full on, that he supports racist discrimination. His real name, as Super Base points out, is Henry Rogers. He went and picked Ibram X. Kendi so that hysterical, fawning white people would be so impressed and be like, they're at their cocktail parties like, have you read the new Ibram X. Kendi? And it's not, they think they're so cultured and so anti-racist. His name is Henry Rogers. It wouldn't sound as fancy at those rich white people parties to say, like, have you read the new Henry Rogers? I love his new piece. Super Based gifted 5 memberships. Thank you to our membership fairy, Super Based. I really appreciate it. If you guys grab one of those, give him a thanks. Mark for $2. Thank you, Mark. Says kudos for the composed tone with a tough topic. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Randy. Hey, Randy, $10. In my humble opinion, it is a point without a distinction. Liberalism has no limiting principles, and it led us to where we are today. Most every slippery slope I've heard over the past 60 years has come true. I understand your point, but I think I'm of the opinion that we can argue about actual liberalism and whether or not it has limiting principles once we get a bunch of the people who think they're liberals and are still in the woke world, once we get them out of the woke world. Like, I have that conversation that you're having amongst conservatives and amongst based people and libertarians and but I never have that conversation with the woke because they don't, first of all, they don't know what liberalism is. They're not liberals. So I think this is why I've been trying to think more about why you and I have different approaches to this word liberal. For me, I think it's because I've fundamentally I have 2 main goals with this channel. One is to help people all people who were never in the woke world, people who have left it, people who have family members in it, to help them better understand what woke is and to have better conversations with people who are still in that world if they want to do that. And the other goal, the primary goal, is to help people who are in that woke world to leave, to see the problems with it. And so because that one is a goal, it's like, I have to show them that it's not liberal, because so many of them, Randy, they have an attachment to liberalism as an identity, and they think that if they leave woke, they're not a liberal anymore. And it's like, that's not true. Actually, being a liberal means that you have to leave woke. You have to. If you're a real liberal, you're not woke. So it's like helping them understand that. And they have such a psychological attachment, like an identity attachment to this label. And it's sort of showing them, well, that label that you cling to, that you really love, liberal, that's not woke anyway. Being a liberal demands that you are anti-woke, necessarily. Randy Wallen for 5. Thank you, Randy. He says cities burned in the 60s and it was mostly leftist violence. True. The racist South was democratic. Yes. The Klan was the paramilitary arm of the left. Yes. Just like today, it's the Antifa is the paramilitary arm. The Antifa and BLM of the left. Yeah, it used to be the KKK. And they've really divorced themselves from that, haven't they? A lot of young people grow up in this world thinking that the KKK was like, oh, those were all Republicans and conservatives. It's like, no. Michael Collier for $4.99. Thank you, Michael. Says, my son started pharmacology grad school today and had a mandatory 3-hour indoctrination class on DEI. I am so sorry. By the way, I'm working on a paper right now about some DEI materials that were given at a workplace. And if you have things like that you ever want to give me anonymously, I'm happy to write about it and expose it or direct you to a journalist. I'm happy to do that. So feel free to let me know about that, about things like that if you want to, at deprogrammedpod@gmail.com. And I would never reveal your identity. But yeah, I'm working on a paper. Hopefully it's going to be out tomorrow about a company that's been doing DEI and mandatory indoctrination for employees. Skillet for $5. Hey, Skillet. So sadly, I just have time to send this real quick. We'll have to watch later, but Selfish Ask, when's the next book club? Okay, I haven't said it yet. I'm sorry. That's a short answer. We're getting ready. We're juggling a lot of travel that's coming up in the next few weeks. And so I got to pick a date that I can actually achieve and that we can do this. It's probably going to be sometime in September, though. I'll just tell you now, it's September. And I think it should be Hillbilly Elegy. Maybe we should do a poll and see, but that's so topical. And I think maybe people will want an excuse to read it and to read it with others. Since it's so topical, JD Vance is the vice presidential nominee. And if you haven't read it and you've been meaning to, this might be a good time to do that one. I'm pleasure reading a book from, not that I wouldn't be pleasure reading Hillbilly Elegy either, but I just started reading on my own this book from 1949. I found it at a thrift shop. It's called The Parasites. It's great. Oh my gosh. I was like, maybe I should make this a book eventually, but a book club selection sounds like a good pick to me. Oh, good. Therese, I'm reading it right now. Perfect. Okay, well, I'm going to pick a date in September. Yes, Hillbilly Elegy. Okay. I'm going to pick a date in September. I'll announce it on the community tab and we can all get together and talk about it. Cool. Okay, well, I wanted to keep this one short today. Oh, wow, there's 200 people watching. Maybe I shouldn't end. But we went through it. I want to do it quickly. Here's what I'll end on. I made this is very simple. This is something you can share with the people in your life who say they are liberals and don't realize that woke is not liberal. I'm going to let me stop sharing this. I'm going to put this on the community tab. And it's a really very simple graphic, so they can't misunderstand it. Here we go. And it's just some of the bullet points, the differences between liberals and the modern woke left. So you can see here in the liberal column, liberals believe in free speech. In the modern woke left, they believe in censorship. Liberals believe in individualism. The modern woke left believes in collectivism. Liberals believe in liberty. The modern woke left believes in dependence. Liberals believe in private property. The modern woke left believes in communism. You will own nothing and you will be happy. That's what they believe in. Liberals believe in equality. The modern woke left believes in equity. Liberals believe in the consent of the governed, and the modern woke left believes in authoritarianism. Liberals believe in equality under the law, and the modern woke left believes in legalized racial and sex-based discrimination. These are some, there it is in black and white, literally, some big differences between liberals and the modern woke left. I'm going to drop this on the community tab. Take it, share it far and wide. It's not a fancy meme. It's a simple meme. Hopefully you can get some people who think that they're liberals to think about this a little bit more. And I hope that's helpful. Okay. Well, one last thing. I'm against individualism. It's selfish. No, it's not. I think this depends on how you're defining individualism. Individualism means treating one another as in treating people as individuals, meaning judging people and treating them differently based on the things you should be judging them on, the content of their character, their behavior, their actions, what they believe, what they put out into the world, what they do. That's what you should judge and treat people differently based on that, not based on what race they are, what sex they are. Collectivism is like, oh no, I'm going to judge you based on what race you are. That's how I'm going to decide how I treat you, based on what race you are, or based on what sex you are, or based on, what other, any multitude of so-called identity groups you're in. That's how I'm going to judge you. That's ridiculous. I think what you mean, Mostello, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you mean is that in terms of like a personal philosophy of how you operate in the world, you don't think that people should be so individualistic in terms of only thinking about themselves. If that's what you mean, I agree with you. I think we flourish in families, and families flourish in societies, communities and societies. And so, we're communal, but we're not collectivist. We don't judge individuals as if they're just group members. That's the difference, right? Randy for $10. Thank you, Randy. He says, for me, it's the old real communism hasn't been tried yet. Real liberalism should be judged by its fruits. Its fruits have led to woke. In my humble opinion, falling back on I'm a liberal is too convenient by half. And by the way, he says you're awesome. You don't have to measure it with that, but thank you. You guys are fun. Piers Taylor for 5 Australian buckaroos says, I avoid using the word liberal totally. In Australia, the Liberal Party is the so-called conservative party, and they ain't even real conservatives. What? That's when you get into some wackadoodle stuff across the pond, because you guys put liberal, you guys put liberal in all kinds of things that they're not even like you're saying they're not even real conservatives. Are they leftists? I guess that's what you mean. They're leftists who say they're conservatives who call themselves liberals. It's real confusing. Thank you for the super chat. Okay. If you have any more questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap this up. And I hope this one was useful. Maybe this is one you can share with somebody who thinks they're liberal. Yeah, I'm not offended if you ever share these things and go, hey, I found this weird person online. What do you think about what you can act like you don't agree. That's okay. Because that sometimes they'll be more open to watching it or listening to it if you say it that way. It won't offend me. You can be like, hey, do you think she's onto something? I don't know. That's okay. Okay. I think that's it. Okay, I'm wrapping up. So I will see you guys on Wednesday. We're doing another That Christian panel. We're going to have a special guest Wednesday at 6:00 Central. We do the Christian panel every 2 weeks. And it's me, Michelle from Force of Light, Brahmable, Odin from OMB Reviews and FNT. And then we sometimes have special guests sit in with us. We're going to be doing that one this Wednesday at 6:00 Central. I hope to see you there. And have a good rest of your Monday, guys. Hey, Real Raven, good to see you. Texas Sheep Lady. It's a lot of familiar folks here today. Okay, take care.